So hi everyone and welcome to today's inspir'em webinar. This is in our persona series that we're running up until Christmas. The idea of the persona series is to get sort of up close and personal with some of the C-suite executives, talk to them about some of their roles and potentially the role that they'll play in the decision making around any vendor purchases that we might get involved with. Particularly focused on enterprise sales. So we're looking at some of the bigger deals and some of the bigger C-suite positions that there are out in the industry. Before we get started today, just a couple of reminders about things from us. So this webinar series accompanies our newsletter. The newsletter information will be posted in the chat shortly. If you sign up to the newsletter, then you get 18 newsletters in the year, which will provide tips and tricks around, how you can help with enterprise sales, how we can help with enterprise sales over the next couple of years, and some of the assets and resources that you can get through our website as well. So feel free to sign up to that. It's free of charge to do that, and it's all part of your membership. So today I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by Angela Cretu. I'm going to ask Angela in a second to do an introduction to herself. But essentially what we're trying to do is we're trying to sweep that C-suite. We're trying to understand each one of the individual roles. Last time we were on the webinar, we talked to Laura Mayer, who's ex-CIO of Time Warner and also of HarperCollins. And today we'll be talking, as I mentioned, to Angela. So welcome, Angela. Thanks very much for joining this webinar today.
Thank you very much for inviting me and looking forward to share some of my insights, hopefully adding value to your audience.
Excellent. That's great. Thanks very much. So, Angela, did you want to kick off with a bit of an introduction to yourself? What have you been doing over your span of your career, and also what are you up to now?
So I'm a graduate of cybernetics. I've always been passionate about technology, macroeconomics, and then I've had the chance to join Avon 25 years ago after having a few roles in FMCG and sales and marketing roles. And from then, my life has changed. I had a fascinating ride by the side of this amazing company that offers not just beauty, but as well an opportunity for women to gain financial independence. And they all have such a strong purpose of supporting their well-being. And I lived and worked in different countries around the world, in Russia, in Middle East, Africa. I lived in US, leading the global business model innovation. I led clusters from $1 billion to $2 billion. And in the last part of my career, for the last 5 years, I was the CEO, the global CEO of the company. And as of January this year, I joined as a non-executive director of their board after handing over the helm to my chosen successor to take on the company to the next chapter. I've been blessed to not only learn by the side of a purpose-led company, but as well be part of a dramatic transformation from a traditional direct selling to an omnichannel, high-touch omnichannel business model after 137 years of existence in the market.
No, that's amazing. And for those of us that are of a certain generation, we always remember the Avon calling
The
point.
ding dong.
Many of our listeners are just way too young to remember that, but certainly many of us that are in the background have been very amused by the fact that we were having the Avon lady come on to our webinar.
Yeah.
So delighted to have you with us. That's amazing.
Thank you.
So we had an opportunity to have a chat a couple of weeks ago, and we recorded a bit of a longer webinar that people can listen back to. But I think one of the things that struck me, and we were just talking about this earlier, was about the lifestyle of a CEO. And I think actually for some of our listeners, I think it's really important to understand some of the less glamorous sides of being the CEO. So perhaps maybe just to get started, you could just give us a little insight into what's the diary like of being a CEO?
Well, first of all, I would like really to call out that it's indeed meaningful and it's gratifying and it's rewarding to have an impact that creates value for people around yourself. So that's clearly the ultimate purpose of any given CEO or leader in this world. Yet the everyday calendar, the everyday agenda is under two words: managing paradoxes. You always have to deal with conflicting forces, like shareholders would want to maximize value if it's possible in the shortest time possible. You would have the customers who would want the best value for the product. They want fast innovation, they want compelling innovation, best shopping experience, best product experience, the overall engagement, the gratifying experience that we create for them. It has to be compelling, competitive. And that comes with its own dedicated resources. Then you have the associates, other important stakeholders, critical stakeholders in the entire journey. Associates, employees are the partners in this journey. They don't want just to transact their time against the salary at the end of the month. They want a meaningful, engaging experience. They want not just the learning, but as well to feel that they are part of something bigger than just selling their time and their physical presence. And then, of course, you have, in our case at Avon, it was important to have 5 million representatives around the world, 5 million, mainly women, most of them women, who would also want to, an army of volunteers would want to have a rewarding experience for sharing beauty and purpose with their friends. So these are the key stakeholders. But outside of all this, as a CEO, you have to deal daily, zoom out and zoom in with agility, with a series of situations outside of the prescriptive calendar that one would set, which would be the management process around stakeholders management, as I called out, meeting the board, making sure that the board is aligned, because board as well, it's an eclectic group of different interests, different visions of what the business one needs. Making sure that people are taken care of, that there is a clear culture and an organizational process in the company, that the team is fit, it's fast, it's focused, that there is a clear strategy, that the action is following the strategy. So this is the prescriptive calendar that has to be populated as clear for everyone. So everyone understands the game plan. And they feel part of it, and they are engaged as partners to drive it. But outside of all this, there is a crisis in the daily menu. When you have a global portfolio, things happen, people related, work different issues, accidents. When you have 60 markets in your portfolio, you have a political situation somewhere that really it's creating issues. You have new regulations. You have local currency devaluations. You have a meltdown of an economical environment somewhere else. So at all times, a crisis becomes a daily dish in your daily menu. So it's as a CEO, this managing paradoxes is not just stakeholder management. This sometimes with conflicting interests, where you need to be always rebalance optimally resources, attention, energy, time, and never take as granted the formulas of yesterday, but always revalidate. Is this right for today's environment? Because the environments are changing so fast. Yeah, and the pace is crazy. And you say this turbo VUCA world, yeah. But as well, manage the paradox of what's short-term, what's long-term, how to prioritize, how to declutter, what's essential, what's not. I think that is what creates a huge stress for any given CEO to at all times review what's just noise and the loud voice of few versus meaningful voice of many. Yeah. So I think that these are few elements just to create a little bit of how agenda could look like. Some of it's well established, prescriptive. Other time has to be created. These are the emerging situations that have to be properly incorporated.
Yeah, and that's really interesting because we often talk about our sort of sales community about how they can get in C-suite diaries, and the idea of driving innovation, driving new ideas, all of those sorts of things, which is great. The trouble is we haven't got time for a persistent ideas factory, because there's keeping the lights on, running the business. There's always an emergency, always a crisis that needs to be run. So just on that, how would you balance the time then between, you've done a lot of innovation in Avon over the past 5 years. How did you balance keeping ahead of what could be coming? So keeping an eye on those strategic objectives and what you could be doing for the future, versus balancing the consistent crisis management that goes on in everyday global organizations?
I mean, it all starts with humility, that what brought you the success yesterday is not relevant any longer today. You called it out the ding dong. Yes, everyone has a nostalgic feeling about Avon, thinking about their grandma choices or their own choices when they were very young. Yet this doesn't make it a compelling choice in beauty for women nowadays. So the humble question of every day would be, why would she choose me today? As a product, as a service, as a leader, even. Why would my people choose me? I mean, I know I've been placed into this position by my bosses, by the way, but would my people feel I'm adding value? And I think with this humble question, I try to be fit to always strive for bringing value, stay current with what is going on, not just in my industry, but overall, because there is a cross-industry effect of, and cause and effect of many movements that will impact either the purchase power, preferences to connect, beauty choices even. In times of conflict versus times of peace. I mean, you would hear a lot about the lipstick syndrome, yes. So there are those elements that have to be understood. So as a leader, it's important to stay current with what's going on. First of all, externally, overall, socially, politically, and understand the global scale and cultural nuances, that there is not one size fits all, especially if you have had a global portfolio. But second is also internally, always keep yourself fit and the team re-questioning every day, with every moment when you take a strategic decision or a tactical one, an executional decision. But is this the best value I can add today with the conditions I see in the market today?
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, that's great. And so then I'm just wondering on that as well then. Just, thinking about some of those challenges about how you sort of keep abreast and sort of keep ahead of what's going on. I know we talked about this on the previous webinar that we did, but we talked about how vendors can influence that and how they can impact that sort of within the everyday. So, as CEO of a large global organization, I imagine that many people were trying to get in your diary. Perhaps you could just give us a little insight into how did you filter the requests that you had to get in your diary, and perhaps share a little bit about how people did get in your diary when they were making those requests, because I'm sure there was lots of innovation they were trying to give you. So how did they then get in your diary to sort of share that information with you?
I just want to share, I mean, it would be very important for every salesperson in the room or those who are going to watch this webinar later is to understand that the inbox of a CEO, no matter the size of their company, it has at least 50 to 100 emails a day, if not more. Outside of the internal messages, because it's all like a radar screen of what's going on in the company. No matter how much you delegate and empower people to make their own calls, there are still critical calls that you are responsible for that would land in your inbox, and they need quick decision making, and they need scrutiny, and they need attention. So the attention span of a CEO, it's like a squirrel, honestly. Do not expect too much. You need to treat them like, have respect for their time and understand you are one of 100. One of 100, really. And then I would have my inbox full, and whenever I many of the times I don't even get into that email. I just read the subject of the email. And as the subject of the email, it's impersonal. It just assumes that they know what I need, but it's not really actually for me. You can see it's even an AI written. You can even recognize some of the words that are AI written emails, are bulk emails to all. I don't even open them. I just delete them, or even worse, I just mark them as junk. So they will never reach my inbox again, because they are cluttering my inbox, and therefore derailing my attention from what's essential. Speaking about the paradoxes, yes. So, but I have this story that I want to share today, and I think it's one of my most beautiful stories about a relationship, and this will address as well what kind of partnerships I created with my vendors generally. Once I got this email that in the subject, it was my experience as an Avon representatives, there is so much potential, again, I mean, it was first of all personal, it was but second, it was calling out potential. It was clearly not something, to complain about. It was something that at least triggered my curiosity. So I did open the email, because I would always open something that I thought it was relevant to me. It was one of my key stakeholders, which is Avon representative. And then it was so nicely structured, short, concise, and it started something very personal. And this was, and I can disclose here, and I hope she would not mind, this was Kate Hunt from Salesforce. And she said, look, I have tried for the last 3 months, not 1 week, not 1 day, 3 months, to be an Avon representative. I deeply love this and that and that. And in the same time, I think there is a huge potential for the company to, and she then gave me some metrics to increase the productivity of the representatives, their engagement, their retention, by creating these new types of digital experiences. And only the last sentence was, I think I can help. Let's talk about creating a meaningful partnership. That was it. And because it was short, as clear bullet points, and it was personal, I saw the effort. She actually walked in my shoes as a company. She actually understood my pain and understood my opportunities. And she found such a beautiful way to offer her services. Not only Salesforce became one of our critical partners, we equally created a very new type of contract, not just buying services off their shelf, but actually co-creating together. We innovated together. They are our innovation partner, new solutions that are fitting only Avon, and created a unique experience that now can create a competitive edge for us, and as well for them, a different type to, personalize their services. So I would say secret is stand out, personalize as much as possible, and subject of the email matters. It's extremely important, because many of the people would just place them in junk. And then the body of the email has to be very concise and truly relevant for the recipient.
That's great. That's a really great story. And I know it was interesting because when we had this conversation previously as well, we were talking about vendors and how they just spam your inbox and all those sorts of things. And then I remember the situation just like now, just, your eyes light up at the idea of somebody really adding value. And that was, a delight to receive that email. If anybody's got any questions, if you'd like to put the questions either in the chat or in the Q&A, we'll take a couple of questions from Angela in a second from the team. I know Jen's put one in already. We'll get to that in just a second. But just to follow up on that email style, we're big advocates of the power of veto, getting to veto, selling to veto. The veto methodology is very much about those, subject matter. The subject is so important for any email when you're trying to get into C-suite. You need to be short, sharp. You need to be succinct in your messaging. You need to use metrics because people need to see the art of the possible. But also you have to talk in the C-suite's language, because if you're not talking in the language of the customer of what they need today, like you say, it could just be another AI email. And frankly, we get lots of those every day. So that's great that you had that type of message.
To be as visual, contrast making as possible. I mean, if there is, because again, please treat executives here, and I know it sounds a little bit, hilarious, but treat them like kids, because their span of attention, it's really not the one you would imagine, because they have so much to deal with in any given day.
Yeah.
So as visual, as contrasting, as really showing the work behind that you truly understand what they're going through. A simple kind of a pitch message that goes to all in bulk, it's not working any longer.
Yeah, that was better than where I thought you were going to go with that, because I thought you were going to say treat executives like, and I thought you were going to say kings and queens and princesses, but the fact that you went with kids was not what I was expecting you to say. So perfect. So a couple of questions that we've got from the team then. So the first one is, we've certainly spoke about this last time, about you had a big span of control of executives that were underneath you, and obviously they're responsible for the doing within the organization and the responsibilities. But I wonder if there was ever a time where you had a scenario where you overruled a spending decision. As a CEO, that's not a typical thing that would happen, but perhaps you decided that you should spend more or less on a particular thing. Was there ever such a time, or was that something that you just didn't get involved with?
In terms of the vendor selection, you mean?
Yeah, in terms of vendor selection or purchasing something from a vendor, maybe a strategic purchase you.
Generally, I mean, that's another thing, and I think it's important as well to share. It is very few times that CEO would make a call in regards to a vendor or another. For that, depending the size of the company, of course. If it's a small company, of course, the CEO would decide almost on anything. But if it's a big global company, you have procurement, you have the key account managers, there are teams, you have as well the legal office. So they create committees to analyze, and there is also a matrix of criteria that are usually used to select the best vendor partner possible. And they're not looking just at the cost, they're looking at the value, they're looking at the scalability, they look of their solutions and service. And with those matrix of criteria, then the decision is made. So as a CEO, you cannot afford to come and override that decision unless a new information comes up. But then it's your duty to submit that information again to the team who is responsible for that. So as a CEO, I can recommend a vendor to those complex teams that are set up. And I recommend it, not with for 1 second thinking that would mean also that they are going to be chosen. Because in a big company, again, in a company that has a good integrity in its processes, a CEO doesn't override any vendor selection.
Yeah.
Ever.
Yeah. Yeah, just and I think that's a really important point because often we talk about getting to the economic buyer, which is, ultimate decision maker within an organization. But there is definitely a point in which you go too far. So unless it's a financial systems decision, that would be a CFO. It's whilst the CFO is involved in the budgets, it's unlikely they'd be involved in the vendor selection. And from a CEO perspective as well, you can go too far in the fact that, like you say, you've got lots to be dealing with. Those day-to-day decisions, those selections are not necessarily things you'd be involved with. So very important to see that. And I love your point about integrity because we talk about governance a lot because organizations have to maintain governance to make sure that they're making the right decisions for themselves and their shareholders. Really important. So another question that we've got from that's come in, which talks about how do you get knowledge about innovation outside of meeting with different people? So where would be either the news sources or advisories or the sorts of things where you would source information to make decisions about, well, let's explore that. Let's be curious about that type of innovation.
I would suggest that you keep your curiosity, you keep feeding your curiosity, and that shouldn't be just in the industry, but on various aspects of life, from as I called out, from social to economical. And there are various publications, forums, discussions, alumni from our previous schools. As an example, to me, the alumni from London Business School, to me, it's a tremendous source of information from around the world. They are now general managers, CEOs, they have different top executive positions around the world in different industries, from oil industry to so from energy sectors to FMCG. You would have different opinions about what's going on. So whenever something we see in the news, like what's happening now with Lebanon, the very first thing I would do is to call a few of these alumni and say, like, what you think is going to be the impact on the oil prices, on the overall, supply? Are there going to be any disruptions? What that could mean for us? Shall I immediately task my team to do extra inventory? Is to protect ourselves for a longer period of time, to protect our cost of goods, therefore pricing, and not to pass on the customers the full impact of this crisis. So you immediately capture this. Then you have the banking system, you have your financial advisors. I mean, there are a series of sources from your partners with whom it's important not to have just a vendor buyer relationship, but a co-creating partnership relationship. You organize with them annually innovation bootcamps, because a packaging company, as an example, I cannot treat them just that they pack my goods. To me, they are the key innovators in anything related to sustainability of our packaging. Also, I'm learning what others are doing in the industry, that they don't even have to be from my industry. What other types of packaging are, like aluminum cans or anything else. So that's why I'm saying it, but it's important to be scheduled. Again, now we are going back to prescriptive versus emerging agenda. This learning, it has to be properly scheduled and not just to, how can I say, sing by the tune, like by the ear, but really schedule time and schedule time with key vendors. And it should be in the management process and in the calendar of the year. And you have weekly sources of learning by industry or as an overhaul. And then go to conferences. I made a habit to go to conferences, both with other CEOs from multiple industries and as well in beauty industry. And that was also scheduled frequently in my calendar as a source of learning.
No, that's great. And I love the story about the packaging side of things as well, because we had a similar experience on this week, actually, where we had some goods for customers arrive and the packaging was not as it needed to be. So actually the whole experience of it. So from an experience perspective, something as small as packaging could make such a material difference on
Absolutely.
customer experience. So that's a really interesting point as well around sort of scheduling the time, because often we talk with vendors and vendor salespeople about, scheduling those executive briefing sessions, those innovation sessions, like how can you, like you say, co-create with your customers and be part of the fabric rather than just being somebody selling something to that vendor. No, that's great. I could talk all day, Angela, and just so fascinating to listen to you just come up with some of those things and the emerging situation in Lebanon, like you say. I mean, it's really interesting about what's going to happen there. So, these geopolitical events as well, they're forever things that are in our minds as we're sort of building out our diaries. But that's great. So thank you very much for your time today. For those that are listening to the webinar, there is an extended version of the recording with Angela, which you can listen back to on the platform. So we'll send out the link so people can go and have a look at that. Also, we have got a blog and cheat sheet that's gone with this webinar as well. So you can refer back to that on potentially how you could influence a CEO or work with them on future opportunities. So just last thank you from me, Angela, for joining the webinar today.
Pleasure, and thank you for inviting me.
Amazing. That's great. Thanks very much, everybody. And we'll see you again soon. Thanks very much.